in the
Quiet. Thank you. All right, welcome to Talking in Stations. It's Matterall here with some friends. The date is Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. And we are going to check in on EVE Online, maybe get a weather report in on those metaliminal storms. And then we'll talk about Goonswarm mishap in EVE Echoes, because there's some interesting, should say, secondary effects to a scandal that was brewing in EVE Echoes already. And then we'll talk about maybe the Zenitra again, since that is now released. We'll get some of that news up. And hopefully we'll talk to maybe some people from the war and the war effort and see what's going on there. What about you, Caleb? What do you want to talk about?
I don't have that much on the table because I'm a little bit disappointed at the story that you were referring to. Other than that, it's just the fact that our audience don't necessarily have their facts straight, and they think that I am stealing spin from the meta show. It's actually the other way around. They are tending and trending towards stealing my lines instead, which is fair enough.
Whoa, I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds interesting. Okay, let's move into some news. Looking at EVE Online statistics, CVA is down 27 systems. That was something we were reporting on weeks ago. And you can see Providence slips out of the hands of CVA, which is one of the oldest alliances that has been guarding Providence, a very special region in the history of EVE Online. And this is a big change because we've seen multiple years of CVA control over the region, and then some special trappings with it, like their philosophy on who to shoot in space and who not to shoot, and also their religious fervor and loyalty to the Amarian Empire, which Providence sits next to on the map, as we can see when we look here.
If you look at Coalition Hispania, also in the soft changes, they were part of CVA's coalition, and the systems that they picked up were from CVA soft.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's dive into this topic. I want to first set up what Providence is for people who may not know. Let's say you're a new player to EVE Online, or maybe you're here from EVE Echoes visiting and you want to know, should I play EVE Online? Let's give you a little bit of background on what Providence was in the Tranquility server. And we can go all the way back there. There are actually two EVE Online servers. There's a big one that serves the world, and there's a smaller one that serves only Chinese players. And we call the Western one, or the world global one, Tranquility. The other one is called Serenity, and that kind of fits for Chinese players, doesn't it? So Tranquility has a history for this one area called Providence. That's the region down here, which sits next to all this Amarian territory. Let's make sure I have the screen up good. And we'll zoom in a little bit. The Amarian territory is Amarian Empire. It's kind of a religious order, and they have like royalty, essentially, houses of power. There's the Sarum house, for instance. There's the Tashmerkan house. There's the Kodorian house, and they own regions pretty much. And the players wanted to get in on that fictional action, right? That's just the backstory of the game. So they ended up saying, well, we'll take Providence because it's right there. It's right, it's part of these regions. And we will be holders as well, holders of space, which is what it is. It's kind of like a landowner. And so they took, some role-playing groups formed this group that essentially was Providence block of alliances that would hold the space. And they were called Provi block. And they change over time, but mostly you have some long-standing groups. One of the first ones was Legion of Spoons, which you can see is the one that lost a lot of territory. I believe Legion of Spoons actually left Provi block when Faction War was created in 2008. And they went on to fight for the Amarian faction instead of sticking around in Proviblock, which is, again, nullsec, right? But CVA stuck around in this place, and they were kind of the core of Proviblock as we knew it. And other little alliances would hang out with them. So CVA has controlled this space since, I want to say, mid-2000s, so 10, 15 years. Long time. It was interrupted a few times here and there, but generally people kind of left them alone. And their whole philosophy was, we're part of the Amarian Empire and we hold these territories in their name and we're loyal to them. And but you can fly through here. We won't shoot you.
CVA is the second oldest alliance in the game after Ushrakan.
Right, which are, interestingly, their rivals, because Ushrakan are Minmatar players that roleplay groups that want to rebel against Amarians and save some of their slave brothers, the NPCs, because, again, Amarians are religious, but they also have a enslaved populace of Minmatar. So Ushrakan are like freedom fighters against CVA, which are holders. And that's kind of the cops and robbers that, robbers is the wrong way to put it.
They created the same thing that is with the empires, right? You have an empire and you have a pirate faction, and this is similar.
We should call it cops and protesters these days, right? But you have that relationship with Ushrakan and CVA and CVA's greater group, Proviblock. And so that's kind of what's been there for a while. Recent events have seen them lose power. Primarily when Pandemic Legion took over Providence. That really diminished a lot of their power. Blackout finished them off because if you could not mine or harvest in these areas, which you couldn't during Blackout, not very well, there was a real disincentive to log in, since most of the people that hung out in Proviblock, not Proviblock proper, but the citizens, the non-aligned groups that lived in here, because there was a police force of players, those guys couldn't really mine, so they kind of took off. Enter a group called Wrecking Crew, which, let's see if we can get their sovereignty name up. I think they're in here. And they are a group that was semi-powerful, but relied on additional help, but the Wrecking Crew actually grew in power. And this is a very interesting part of the EVE meta. CVA and Proviblock were at odds about adopting new tactics for fighting. And this gets really deep, so I won't go too far. Well, maybe I should go into it. But Wrecking Crew is a traditional evolved power that uses capital ships and super capital ships to fight. And in order to beat capital ships and super capital ships, you have to produce your own, which CVA has but doesn't want to use, because those draw a crowd. If you bring those out, people will want to attack them and kill them. So you're actually drawing more people into your zone to fight you when you start showing big ships, big targets, and that sort of thing. So traditionally, CVA has relied on low value battleships and below, and done pretty well with that because they can kind of police the area without those big ships. But after a while, when Wrecking Crew continued to use super capitals, they couldn't be defeated by the sub capitals. So there was a moment where CVA basically had to decide, are we going to play this game of bringing out capitals and super capitals to fight these guys? First of all, just to lose, and second of all, to paint targets on our back for everybody else to come in here and start to take those out. And so that was one of the frictions that was going on. So in other words, CVA and the holders of Proviblock didn't modernize their effort to fight. And eventually it caught up to them. And a few weeks ago, we saw them really unable to fight back and then break apart and then further break apart into a bunch of little parts. And now they're kind of scattered. The CVA has actually moved out of this area, moved to Syndicate with a group called Snuff, which is a whole additional story. And that is why we see now 27 systems dropped. Those are all in Providence, and CVA is now gone from Providence. This is historical. Haven't seen it in
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah, they're out licking their wounds and trying to figure out whether they are going to go back and actually have a full-fledged war.
Yeah, I think they're.
But they used to hold. Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was saying they used to hold that territory, like you said, for years.
Right.
Yeah, like they were the oldest coalition and second oldest alliance in the game.
Mm.
They're still
They're no longer
around.
adopted.
They're still around. They're
Sorry,
just
yeah.
not in their old position of Pravi block, so things have changed in that sense. So, yeah.
And shrunk a massive bunch, right?
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
see fraternity on there is even going up on Dotland. Like, they're groups that would normally just sort of sit in their little space for a while.
Yeah, we'll get
At least-
there. Next, we want to point to that's CVA and their story in Providence. We've covered it a lot in the last, I would say, month. So look for some of the shows that cover that. We also look at 22 systems picked up by Pandemic Horde. And yes, those systems are in Fountain. Now, the reason this is a story is that there's a big war going on in Delve, and Fountain was the first and only so far region that actually traded hands, and it was kind of expected. And what Horde is doing now as the invading force, they're on their way to Delve, but Fountain is on the way to Delve. They have now picked up the territorial claim units, and that's why you're seeing all these systems switch. But this area was defeated about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It feels a bit like something to do while the battering ram is being moved towards Iridia, right? It's like FC what do board. It's like go take the actual sovereignty, even though they don't necessarily need it for anything. It doesn't really have any real purpose, except of course it's nice vanity to paint the map.
Yeah, and you have, if we could show the map here of Fountain. These are the iHubs, which are really the infrastructure hubs that control territory, and those were taken over weeks ago. And you can see that it really all belongs to this group in yellow. That group is Pandemic Horde. They took that over recently. There's with the exception of one NC, that's Northern Coalition, but they're allies. So essentially dominated through the infrastructure hubs, which means you can build roads and build defenses in these systems quickly. But what didn't change is the sovereignty. As you can see, that's not all yellow, because this is kind of an afterthought. The only thing a territorial claim unit does is give you the name of your alliance on that system, which means you dominate it. It also saves you some fuel for the structures that you have in those areas, but it very much is an afterthought, which is why we're seeing it happen now.
Yeah, it's got very little utility, and this is one of the criticisms about the whole SOV thing, and we shouldn't go down that rabbit hole today, but it's basically why no one really fights for SOV on a massive scale, and why, especially during an invasion, it's not relevant. It's just an afterthought. It's something to do while waiting for the actual fights.
Okay, so that's why Pandemic Horde picked up 22 systems. Both of those events, although they are big, 27 losses and 27 pickups on systems is a big deal, but not really a big deal. Goonswarm losing 13 systems. Let's have a look there. This is also part of the war. Now, this is Aquarius and Fountain. So some of those systems that were picked up were actually picked up from Goonswarm. And Aquarius also has system losses. Again, if we visit Aquarius and we look at the infrastructure hubs, this really tells you who has power in the area. And you can clearly see that on the left-hand side, it is dominated by Condi, which is the call letters for Goonswarm Federation. And on the right-hand side, you can see there's a lot of no man's land, like nobody owns that territory.
There's a lot of space that, as someone was in Goons for a little while, is that they use as a line, or the share, is the jump bridges. So some of this space too is important to them for the jump bridge network to HiSec.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I missed your question. I was reading something. What was that?
Oh no, it wasn't a question. It was just stating that Goons, they hold space like Quirius and other other places that are vital to them in terms of having jump bridges that help you to jump to different systems, shorter routes and like their high sec routes and things. So going from null sec to high sec. So some of this territory is like really important, not just to Goons, but any alliance really, you know, to have those territories claimed.
Right. Okay, so looking back on the map, people winning Providence there. The Rogue Consortium are Rogue Consortium here that picked up 6 systems are actually part of Wrecking Crew, so they are picking up some systems there. And the Initiative are losing systems in Fountain. And Correlación Hispánica picked up 5 systems. They were part of Provi Block. They stayed. They still have their territory inside of Providence. Look at the growth for membership of Silent Company, which is a high sec group that really flags anybody that's new and invites them in. They're growing incredibly fast. 1,200 new players have joined them in the last 7 days. Valkyrie Alliance. Let's take a look at Valkyrie Alliance. They picked up pretty much doubled their numbers recently. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, it looks like they just picked up 1 group here. Spanish. That's definitely Spanish. And we'll check their alliance history. Oh, it looks like these guys came from well, they're their own group. Interesting. Spanish group joined Valkyrie Alliance. I have to look into them. All right. Then you see some smaller things like, well, Trigger Happy losing 292 is kind of a big deal. Goonswarm Federation and Test both losing about 250 is not a big deal. Those groups have huge numbers. All right, let's move over to. Shall we look at the weather report?
Yeah, another one appeared. So now we have 5. Still a weird spawn rate, but yeah, now there's 5.
Now there's 5.
Where did the 5th one spawn?
Veil or Tribute, I think, right? No. Which one did we get? We got Cloud Ring and Tribute and 2 in Providence on the first round, and then it must be it must be the Syndicate one that spawned, if I'm not remembering completely wrong.
Tribute, Syndicate, and Providence were the first 4?
The new ones in Syndicate.
Yeah, and the first ones were Cloud Ring, Tribute, Providence.
No, Cloud Ring's the new one.
Okay, that way around. I remember that it was the one on the left of my map.
Oh, is it Cloud Ring, or did it move there? Oh, so the Syndicate one moved out of Verge Vendor and Placid, correct. So that's the same storm that we saw. That's a Gamma storm, I believe. So we don't know what this one is.
So if someone was brand new, what's the weather events, or what's the specifics of the storm?
Caleb, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I can do. Basically, metaliminal storms are effects, weather effects that the CCP has added to EVE Online recently. They are based out of the wormhole effects, and they're tied into the Triglavian law. So it's basically some secondary effect from all the stuff that the Triglavians have been doing with space, making a little bit of a mess. So these things are now spilling into our space. Well, what would be essentially from the clastic flow, which is some odd sort of phase space. And these effects are now moving around the map like weather systems in real life, and their effects are ranging from strong to weak. So from the center of the storm, you have a strong effect, and then when you get further than one jump from that, you will have the weak effect, and they have a reach of 3 jumps, and they follow jump gate paths. So the total diameter of the actual storm is 6 or 7 jumps, regarding how you count that. And this means that in some cases these can actually span quite a lot of systems. They move around with 1 jump per 24 to 48 hours randomly with momentum, so their algorithm actually knows where they've been. And the effects, as I said, are similar to what is found in wormholes. So there should be 5 types, but we actually only have 4. We are waiting for the 5th one, which is the Dark Storm. And each of these storms have very nice little upsides and benefits that kind of balances out the downside. So some of them have extra anomalies, and some of them have relic sites, and some are good for mining and all that stuff. So you have a major downside, and then you have a nice little upside. And these came in last week, I'd want to say. Everything happened last week, it feels like.
Yeah.
And we got the first 4 on pretty much the first 24 hours. And then recently, we actually saw the 5th one appear, because the end number that CCP has said we're going to get is 8 in total. So we're going to get 2 of each of the 4 types that are then going to start wandering around the entire map. Interesting fact on that is that 2 of them were actually spawned in Providence. So because of the Providence geography and the fact that you can get these storms can actually end up getting a little bit caught in some of those pocket systems, you might actually start seeing some interesting overlaps, because storms overlap and add to each other, and there is no maximum. Well, maybe except for you can't necessarily have more than 4 effects, and I don't know if they do addition of 2 of the same type. I haven't actually had the chance to ask that yet, but CCP Signal from Team Ra, that's actually been creating this, was showing CC screenshots from Jita 44, where he had 3 storm effects overlapping all at once.
So these give, from what you said, they give buffs and debuffs to your ship or your pilot?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice?
If you want the details, I think we should let people go and look it up. We've covered this quite a lot already, so I just wanted us to go through the facts, and then the fact that the 5th storm is now out.
Yeah, the idea is that things aren't normal in those systems, so when you travel through them, there will be some added effects, some buffs, some debuffs to your ship, so you could be in more danger or less danger as you travel through those systems. And there's possibly a new class of player that's a storm chaser that will follow particular storms around to buff themselves when they do the things that they do. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we've already had a lot of the streamers and news coverage have chased them down to check which types they are, because that doesn't actually show on the map for some reason. I hope that will be added soon. If CCP isn't thinking that they should keep them unknown on the map, so people actually have to go and check it out. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we're also waiting for the potential API endpoints, so we can actually get these things onto things like .lan and similar things.
Yeah, I love the idea of storm chasing. We did that first day they came out. But if you're some storms are good for mining, other storms are good for exploration, other storms are good for ratting, and all of those have drawbacks, and those drawbacks might work against what you're trying to do. The explorer, The Explorer Storm, for instance, the Electrical Storm, is good for exploration, but you can't cloak in it. So you can do things better and faster, but you also have less defenses against people who want to track you down. Yeah, pretty cool. All right.
Yeah, basically the two important factors is the no cloak thing and the no logi, right? It's a 90% debuff to logistics and faxes and stuff like that. So fleet fights are not really possible in systems with at least strong effects, but on the outer ones, you could actually have fights without any massive problems because it's pretty much even. It's a 50%, makes it a little bit more exciting.
Yeah. All right. So last thing on that is we have storms in looks like Vale, Cloud Ring, Syndicate, Providence, and Catch. They're kind of interestingly, they're a little bit clustered. We expect to see as many as 3 more storms come out for a total of 8 on the board, on the map at any given time. We see now there's only 5 so far. All right. So that's it for the weather report. Let's go to some kills here. Looks like Losek Schulpen. There's whale hunters have killed another whale in the form of a hell that belonged to Federation of Respect, Honor, Passion Alliance. It came out for about a 23 billion ISK Killmail. We've seen over
Wasn't the cargo? Sorry.
Was there something in there?
Yeah, like why was it so much, or was it just?
It was a super. That's why.
Yeah, they're worth about. I think they're coming back up to about 24 billion, or they will be. They're on their way. But these things got actually pretty low to about 12, 14 billion. They used to be 28. They dropped down to 24. Then in the last few years, they've fallen all the way to 12, 14. And now they're starting to go back up in price because of the scarcity of minerals. But I don't see that as a big Killmail. There might be something in there.
The only thing in the cargo was looks like a couple of extra, some charges and extra fighters and fuel.
It's usually the fighters that'll add up. That's 600 million ISK in fighters, so nothing spectacular. Losecnia again will kill anything in their territory. So this is Canid, which is next to Iridia. Usually Losecnia, they hunt in Iridia, but they will, the neighboring system is Canid, so they might get you there. What we see here is a series of jump freighters, and that is typical for wartime, as the freighters are the ones carrying supplies to the front lines, and they get destroyed if identified. Sometimes if not identified, right? Yeah.
Well, right now, I think the number of targets to shoot at is fairly low. It's very quiet in general because of I would call it the delay of the actual war movement. So things are very quiet, and I think it's not even that much destruction going on. I think we're in a very, not boring, but at least I think economically very bad period, because there's still some weird crabbing going on in space, at least in some areas. That might get interesting when the next security report comes out.
So
I saw Code ganked a ship above. Sorry. If you scroll up a little bit, there's like a freighter or something that Code got. Code notorious for ganking in high sec.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 2 jump freighters that got ganked by Code?
I just saw the one in Jada, the one in Forge. The Raya.
The Rhea. Down here. 25 billion. Jump freighter itself is worth like 12 of that. But this looks like it was carrying Is that loot? Is that loot coming in? I don't.
Someone was hauling a lot of salvage.
Yeah, this looks like it was coming into Jita.
Yeah, reaction stuff that would probably be going. Actually, it could be going either way. The reaction formulas make me think it was someone leaving Cheetah.
Well, that makes more sense. Usually it's leaving because they're set up on the station. When they come out, they undock and they get targeted before they can leave. So jump freighters, if you're in a jump freighter and if you have a jump freighter, you're probably advanced enough to know you're not supposed to fly that thing out of Jita proper. In other words, if you undock, you should be jumping. You should not be flying out manually.
Yes.
Jump freighters will get killed even if they're empty, just for the sport of it, because they're worth like 12 billion. Okay, the other thing is we have a CVA. I think this is an old station. Now, we talked about Providence earlier and how it was pacified by players and they created kind of a...
Oh yeah, that one still had the outpost rig.
Yes, their own environments. So long ago, maybe 2 years now, about a little over two and a half years, in January, I think it was, of 2018, you had the old stations convert over to faction fortizars. And that gave them the ability to be destroyed. It also gave them the ability to be picked up and moved. So these faction fortizars changed completely from their old NPC stations. And a lot of them were picked up and moved and sold off. And you can get one for about 20 to 40 billion ISK, right? They're rare. There's only, how many of them are there? I want to say, I can't say. There's like 105 original ones.
Yeah, there was 100 or something originally.
Yeah,
and
players built many more.
We've had a lot of losses, right?
I don't know if there was 100 originally, because I think that was the original posts. I forgot. It's been 2 years since we covered this topic, and I forgot how many original posts there were. Because there were original stations put in by the game makers, CCP, and then players could build additional ones. And then all those converted.
My memory says 140 for some reason, and I'm not sure if that's correct, but it's up in the 100 and something total with all the faction forts and stuff that got created.
And as long as they were kept in their original location after they got changed so that they could be moved, they had the special rig that you could only get by having it in the original location, and that was on this particular one.
Yeah, because this is one of the oldest ones, right?
It's like a legacy one.
Is this it here, the Upwell A1P outpost rig?
Yes.
And that only exists if the station is not moved. So these stations, if they were left in place, they were a lot more powerful. But if they're moved, they lose this rig, and that reduces their power considerably, because if you look at these bonuses, they're massive bonuses of 15, 18, 180% on different attributes that were specific to them. So the point is that this one was original and stayed in place, but it has now been destroyed because I believe that CVA on their way out fueled it up for 2 years and said, we're not going to give it to you. You'll have to destroy it. And so Wrecking Crew was forced to destroy it. I believe that's what happened with that one.
Hi, Willie.
Is Willie here?
Discord, hello.
Hello, you're on. Oh, Billy.
Welcome.
All right, we're just going over some Killmails, but since we have you here, we'll put the Killmails away for now.
They were boring anyway. Nothing out of the ordinary.
I tell you what, people love their Killmails. They love them, love them, love them. There was one other one that we should hit real quick, and there's probably a lot of Killmails that we should hit because we haven't done this in a while, but it's right here on August 20th. You had a Confessor that was destroyed think it was destroyed by Horde. Normally, a Confessor's not a very big kill, except this one cost 50 billion.
What was in it?
Well, I know the
Oh.
story of that one. That one, the guy flying it saw an officer rat on some Killmails and fountains, so he was a wormholer who had a connection nearby, so he went over to check out what was going on with the officer, and Horde's cap fleet was on their way back from an op, and a couple of them decided to take out the officer. He looted it right after they took it out, and then they killed him with all the officer loot inside.
And it dropped.
Yep. All the officer mods dropped.
Let's check out the loot, because it was here in cargo, I believe. Look at this. Serpentis, Shadow Serpentis Magnetic Field Stabilizer. That's not the right one. This is it right here. Carmax Modified Damage Control. Worth 44 billion. I think that's got to be wrong. Never seen a module worth 44 billion. Have you?
It is indeed worth 44 billion isk.
Wow.
Or more.
I have. Okay, when I got killed in my jump freighter, which was a big publicity mess, I got killed with a purple damage control module. It was for my Titan, and I put it on there because I wanted a tank. I figured everybody would target me and kill me. So then I thought, I don't really need this. So I got rid of it, and I forgot where I put it for a long time. It ended up in a jump freighter that I used that got killed. And it was only worth 14 billion. And I thought that was super expensive. So this 44 billion is amazing.
So the way
You want to see Killmail keyboard?
their shield and armor resistances don't stack against the other modules that provide shield and armor resistances. And the higher meta level, high level officer modules give an increase of 1 to 2% per meta level. So the Cormax is 1% better than the Satils, which is 1.5% better than the two Vans, which is 1.5% better than the, I can't remember the lowest Serpentis officer name.
Surprised you remembered those.
But it's a very, very effective module. So when you look at it, it's almost a 20% armor resist increase up on that damage control, and it's insanely rare, to say the least. And they just, it's not even like, if there was more of them in game, more pilots would want them, but they're like, the amount of Cormac damage controls in game would be under 50, I'm sure. Like, it's insanely rare.
Wow.
To see there.
We're from still testing, we hear that there is a invulnerability field. Well, actually, it's no longer called that, but Estimals or something? Estimils?
Yeah, they're usually anywhere from 50 to 150 bill, depending on if you can get them or not.
So a module is worth 150 up to 150 billion.
I've sell for 150. I think I've seen them sell for like 60, 70, 80. But
yeah,
people that are willing to pay the price, that's what it's worth.
Dang. Amazing.
I mean, it's part of these are kind of modules that only end up really showing up on like Komodos and Molochs and that kind of stuff.
Marshals.
Right? So only on,
I don't know if I'd put a Cormax on a Marshal, but
only on faction, very expensive and rare ships that you want to preserve. Yeah. All right. Well,
for if you have money.
Billy, tell us what's going on. What's the latest in the war? I'll just say that over the weekend there was some big news coming out from you guys. What happened?
We did lots of move ops, and we're still doing move ops, and we've got more move ops. Lots and lots of move ops. It's very exciting.
Troops are on the move.
Wow, it literally is troops in the move. It's probably the best way to say it. You know, we're trying to push all our combat forces to Marmiha, or our combat Titans and super fleets, I guess you could say, and getting ready for the end of phase 2 here. Numbers were really good. They weren't crazy, but they were good. We broke 1,000 Titans on the first day. And obviously super carriers are a little lower, but they
So-
caught up eventually.
You can confirm over 1,000 Titans in one day because there's been some speculation about that.
Sure, yeah.
So 1,000 Titans moving in one day. We can see here there's over 1,400 jumps into that system in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, that's like the secondary, and I don't know, that's the third or fourth move ops you're seeing there.
Wow.
I don't even know what number we're on now. So
What are
Yeah,
all
that'll
those?
include everything, that wouldn't it? Sorry.
What are all those Titans for?
delve.
So you're gonna march into Delve through Fountain, if you can.
I'm not going to say where we're gonna or what angle we're gonna approach from, but
because actually that yeah, that system allows you to go through Delve, but also through Quarius, right?
Marmiha is in the middle of Viridia, basically, which means we can go west, approach in from Fountain. We can go southwest, approach in from the once Meb Delve pipe. We can go southeast and move towards Aoife and that area, and going towards Quarius. Like there's all kinds of options open to us.
Oh
We
yeah.
might do all three at once. Who knows?
All right, we'll keep us guessing until we see it, I guess. Yeah, so it's like 3 entrances. One here from Fountain. One here. I think that's Conid, right? I think comes in from Conid or Iridia. And then there's these two coming in through Fountain. Sorry, through Quarius. That is an interesting move. And how did your fleet of 1,000 Titans, how did they get there? What did you do?
We set up a keep searching all the way from FAT and Catch to Marmiha. So all the way through Providence, through Domain and Tash Merkan, through Kador, and then I think it's Nisus, Genesis region, right before Marmiha.
Wow.
And just, we shuttled over. We built a road and we took that road.
Oh, so that was what that Providence Keepstar was for.
That is what that Providence Keepstar was for.
It was also very nice to actually mention that road pretty much when it was done here on the show. So it's not like this was unknown to us.
So Parv is saying what's been popular, I've been hearing out there were only 600 Titans, 400 were missing. You want to answer that criticism?
I mean, what's the point in trying to... Like when somebody drinks the Kool-Aid, it's like, but my boss told me it was only 600. It's like I'm not gonna paste together D-scans. Like we have auth that tracks our fleets, right? So we can look at our fleets as they're going and know how many are in fleet. But obviously we were doing, I don't know, it was something like 20 or 25 different fleets of ships. Tested 4 fleets alone.
Where's that rumor come from? I'm not familiar with that rumor. I don't know where it comes from, but I've just been seeing people post that all the time.
That's the Imperium state line. So
okay.
I mean that kind of tells you the level of credibility of it, right? In terms of a war, it's like if you want your enemy to look less menacing, then you just be like, oh, they don't have that many.
All right. Well, look, we're talking in stations. We're talking to one of the campaign commanders from this effort from the attacking side. He's telling us there were 1,000 Titans. He would know, unless he's lying. I'm going to take his word for it. I'm not going to listen to
listen,
the stuff. And that's not a bias thing.
We made no effort to hide our numbers, but we also made no effort to have a big, easily descannable fleet, right? Like we focused on making it as simple and effective and easy for our pilots to move across the road as possible, which means multiple fleets. You jump, you dock, which means your numbers aren't super visible. So if they want to say they only saw 600, that doesn't bother me. They're fine to say that, but we know what we had, and that doesn't. It doesn't worry me if they think we only have 600 and they want to, think that's their prerogative.
Well,
it's not something anybody's going to stress it over. We know what we had, and they know.
Right.
They think they know what we had, I guess, or I don't know if they're saying that.
From your perspective, it doesn't. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. From your perspective, it doesn't matter what they think. I understand that. From our perspective, this is when we get hit with you're being biased, you're taking Billy's word for it, and that sort of stuff. And I just want to say, the 600 number to me is what we would consider here at Talking in Stations a narrative push. It's a positioning of truths or realities, and that's the kind of stuff we block out. It's not us being biased against the Imperium. The Imperium says things that are meant to affect other players, and we try not to pass on that stuff. And that's why it seems like we're resisting what the Imperium is saying. And we're not. What we're trying to do is get to truths, and that's what we do most of the time. So that I just want to like say that one more time, because we're getting a lot of TIS is biased or unbiased. And really, we don't really care if you think we're biased or unbiased, because we're just about adding more voices. We're not about picking out which voices get to win. There you go. Just wanted to get that out there.
And whether it's 600, 800, or 1,000, I'm pretty sure that it was known that there was at least 1,000 initially. Whether there's only 600 showing up on some data, well, I don't know if some of them were not following the rest of the group, or data was gathered poorly. It doesn't matter. The point is that this can't be all of them. So I would more ask really, where's the rest, and when are they going to appear?
Well, that was the first day, right? Like that was just a 2-day notice, move up, first day moves. Like we had, another 70 in the last move up, I think, something like that. Like, it's just move up after move up after move up. And the thing about setting up a keep start chain is anybody can literally go on their own leisure. You literally pop a sino, you jump, you dock. Pop a sino, you jump, you dock. Any single person can walk out along the road at their convenience with no risk. They might lose a recon or two. That's literally it.
We talked to Killabee about that, because he's like, well, I thought it was kind of overkill. And then I thought, well, this really gives you an opportunity to move stragglers, right? Because without keep stars, you could not move stragglers.
Well, that's exactly it, right? And it's important to remember, during the actual move op itself, we had the fleet called the latecomer fleet, and literally within an hour and a half of the move op starting, that fleet was at 200 people, right? Like, it's just because not everybody is able to show up at 1600 eve time exactly on the dot and start moving with the fleet like every time. And that's why super cap move ops are usually so problematic, because you're trying to stay on schedule and you're trying to move a group as one. But when you have a keep start chain, you can literally just go, take it at your own time. If you got to go eat lunch in the middle of the op, go eat lunch in the middle of the op. It's no biggie. You can move down it later. Mm-hmm. And that convenience for pilots, that ability to just freely traverse the road, is so incredibly effective at allowing people to get where they need to be without putting a ton of hassle on them, a ton of pressure.
Let's throw my 2 cents in.
Sure.
So, from a tactical space, like if you're at war or not, or if you're not at war, right, you're moving space. So, it does make sense for you, and not saying you're not telling the truth, or like there's whatever bias, all that sort of stuff you've been talking about. But from a tactical perspective, it also makes sense to to keep some things hidden. And again, it's not about like trying to lie to people, hide. It's just the tactics of especially during wartime. And I think a lot of people like who've played E for a long time can understand that, because you might, there's spies everywhere and stuff, but you might be able to see you have 1,000 Titans, but you might have a couple of sneaky Titans, like, going through back route, no one knows. Like, so yeah, that's just, my thought on that too. Like, I know Billy is like, telling what he can, but I can also see from a tactical point of view, there might be some things that he just, I don't know. There's always stuff going on.
In this case, I don't think they've been very secret with anything. They're showing force. It's showing force. That's maybe why the spin is only 600 Titans. Whether that's factual or not doesn't really matter. It's about the visibility of the approach. You have not hidden anything really. Well, and I feel like that's deliberate, right? To show how many are actually forming up, and that you are definitely coming to breach that gate, or whichever gate you choose. So, well, this shenanigans back and forth with spin and counter spin is always entertaining, but I'm just waiting for everything to get ready so we can stop this prologue.
Yeah. And oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, for the most part, you're right? Like, but as I said earlier, it's important to understand this wasn't like a parade op, which is usually what we call that when everybody focuses on getting together, doing the beautiful giant jump in where you have the 1,000 Titans jumping at the same moment. It looks really beautiful. And it's about making sure the guys see it and see the strength of your group. This was much more about just convenience and getting down. it's obvious to anybody as we moved that there was a lot of Titans, but we definitely made no real effort to
I imagine
show the strength there. It was just naturally shown.
If it was a show of strength, and I'm putting words into your mouth here, but I'm thinking of my time spent with Northern Coalition. When we would move, our corporation alone had more than 40 Titans, and this is at a time when that wasn't the case with everybody, right? This is pre World War B era. It was a show of force, and it felt great to see all those guys, all those corporations aligned with hundreds and hundreds of Titans. Only PL and NC could really do that at the time. I think maybe Goonswarm could too. But if you wanted to do that, you would maybe not have just a 2-day notice. You might have like a 4-day notice and say we're all.
Usually, you would aim for 2 weeks for this kind of an operation if you were really hoping to hype the numbers, right? You want everybody to show up at the same time, so you get that maximum. Oh, look, we've got 1,500 Titans, right? Like, it's a day and a half notice is not enough time for people to have made alternative plans around it. And the goal, once again, with the Keepster chain is to make it so that people don't have to make alternate plans; they can go at their leisure.
Yeah, why wouldn't you do that if these wars are about morale and all that sort of thing? And you guys did have I would just say a pretty embarrassing loss in YTAC 2. Niarja is kind of looked upon as a loss for you guys, and this might be narratives that are coming out or psychological warfare. But
I mean, the reality is most of those things are narrative, right? Like the Y2 loss was a loss, right? But it wasn't an embarrassing loss. It was literally just the first time we didn't actually completely win, right? Literally, that's the first time we haven't won a strategic objective. Right? It's like to say it's an embarrassing loss is like, well, I don't know.
There have been other objectives you've fallen short on. I imagine some of the raids in the south didn't go as planned.
Yeah, but like at the large level objective, that's the first one.
Yeah.
And certainly like Niarja, I don't even think registers for 99% of people in within Pappy, especially anybody that's not in test. It's just one of those things where like there was no feeling that we needed to do morale kind of operations. It was literally we're in a good spot, let's focus on making this as easy as possible for our guys. And sometimes that in itself is much more important to morale than anything that you're going to do with like optics and that kind of stuff. It's like, was this move op easy? Yes. Okay. Versus like putting your guys through 5-hour slogs of move ops where they have to be online and they can't miss a jump, otherwise they fall behind and they're sitting on a Fortizar, and people are then at risk of dying to like White Sky or whoever, or Nullsecnia, whoever the local gankers are.
I didn't think of that. So the idea that there's ease to this, there's security to it, you can almost do it by yourself, has to show some gains, right? Like we can impose our power. Look at what we can do. We can cross from the south to the west with safety.
Yeah, if you look at the Titan loss mails since the fight that Dreadbomb had at the end of June, basically pretty much every single one of them was someone trying to move alone.
Yeah. That's the majority of Titan losses in this game, almost probably. People don't lose Titans like in many ways besides moving, like because they're just not used that much outside of that. So if you make it so that the road is safe, then all of a sudden it's a very different dynamic, and we're like hyper aware of how many supers and Titans we could lose on an objective like this or on a move up like this if it was all along Fortizars. It takes very little, like two Hectors and 5 to 10 Dreads, and you can kill yourself a Titan every couple hours if they're just kind of straggling along. So
now you are a CSM member as well, really, and just to be fair on this whole topic with spin and narrative and all that shenanigan, I get a little bit annoyed at people expecting someone to not have the logical narrative. There is no way that you will get a losing side to admit the size of a loss and vice versa. There's always going to be exaggeration and edits, and that's part of war, right? And that's the same as if you expect CCP or a CSM member to spill something that you know is not going to be spilled. So it's just dumb to sit there and talk about these biased things. People have their opinions, and they will give you the side of any story that fits within how they perceive it and the level of honesty that they can actually afford. So let's stop this mudslinging, because I think that the exciting thing is to try to figure out where is the truth. Like, I've been watching higher perspective videos, and I love those because they're really well made, and it's showing the Pappy side's activities and some of their poking into Delve with fleets, and they are selectively edited. That's just what you do. You don't necessarily tell the story from a completely objective point of view, because that is not in your interest. So let's just enjoy the spin and the narratives and the back and forth, and even the Fountain Frank, even though that's a little bit maybe too larpy for what's normal in Eve. But I think this is just more good drama.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, I mean, you guys in America have CNN, you guys have Fox, right? And one's on one side, the other's on the other. You know, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle, right? And I'm not saying that, you know, how do I put this? I'm aware I have my own biases and my own story to tell, because that's the view I take, right? And obviously, I'm not going to be able to see it from the side of an Imperium line member, although I do my best to try. But you know, one side may spin harder than the other, but usually there's at least some level of spin in every word, right? Every kind of way that something is viewed. If you don't acknowledge that, you're kind of ignoring the point, I guess.
And we don't actually claim neutrality on TIS. We just try to at least get some point of inclusivity, that we want as many voices as possible, and we want both sides or both voices represented. And I don't think that there's been a massive slant on one side or the other. We've had Boat here, I'm here. There's plenty of other Imperium-friendly voices on TIS. The fact that we might not get all the max spin from the meta show and stuff like that is really a selective choice from our side. We don't necessarily want that tone. This is why I have been enjoying when it's moderate on both sides, and I love the fact that Killer and B drops in here from time to time and gives us their side without the max overdrive.
Yeah. So from our perspective, and then we can rest it after this, because we're taking a point of privilege talking about our perspective as TIS, right? We want to talk to Billy about what he's doing, not about what we're doing or reacting to. But the last thing is, it is annoying to us not to be called biased. That's not annoying at all, because we're, again, multifaceted. We invite all the voices. But what we see usually out of Imperium is not really just kind of boycotting anybody but your own group, their broadcast system, and then calling everybody else fake news. I mean, you see what that pattern looks like, right? That's the US government right now. It's, we'll spin like crazy to give you our version. We'll prevent our guys from being talked to by anybody else. And then what's annoying, and this is what I'm getting to, is seeing that wash up on our shores. Like all that psychological warfare wash up on our shores to try to infect what we're talking about. So if you're feeling like we're not telling the truth or we're biased one way or the other, what you're sensing is that you're not getting through the distortion field so we can keep narratives out. Villy will sneak them bias because we don't know, because he's going to spin the way he wants to put the best face on whatever he's doing. We try to trap him, but he's usually truthful. Killaby is usually truthful. And these guys show up all the time to talk to you, to tell you what's going on, which is a real privilege for us to be able to have that kind of information. And we would welcome that from any corner of EVE Online, high or low. So that's just kind of how we work. It doesn't bother us, but it is annoying to watch it wash up on our shore all the time. And you could do it. It's maybe a game to you guys. It's fine. It's just a little annoying, but that's all right. We can deal with it. You're not banned from the channel for calling on us one way or the other. Okay, enough of that. Why did we get into that? Oh, we should probably move on, Caleb, to
It's mostly because I think Billy was underplaying things like the Niarja thing because it was not a relevant thing on a big scale, but it was a little bit of an embarrassment, and then that's a valid thing.
Well, it's hard for me to like. I mean, you guys made it a narrative attack or point or whatever, but like to us, it was a very minor thing, right? So, from your perspective, it wasn't. From our perspective, it was, and it's the middle is the middle, I guess.
Someone from Pappy decided to go down on the court and actually play with the basketball, and for some reason or another, let's not get into details, Goons sent their star player to dunk on them, and that's just a fact, right? But that's not an embarrassing law.
Well, no, that's not a fact. Like, explain to me what you even mean there.
I mean that the interest and the focus on Niarja from you guys was minimal at best.
Correct.
But the fact that you put it out there in the open, so Imperium noticed and said, okay, they're running around and playing with that and have an interest in that. We're going to go and do something about it. And that just.
But that's not true though, right? Because you can literally read in my ping, goons are already there. That's why we're going to side with Edencom, right?
I know that you're mixing up the.
No, I'm not, because I'm literally the one that wrote the ping, right? So, like, tell me how I'm wrong.
There was pings and call out coming out before your ping, right?
There was a brave ping by Naur Sammy. Yes.
That was mainly the one that caught the eyes of the Imperium, and that was when they started waking up. And when you then escalated it, then they went full force and said, okay, we're going to go and mess with this. And I'm just saying, it's not a relative thing, but you gave them the opportunity to actually spin this bigger than it is. It's a cake in the face, and it's fine, but nothing more than that.
Sure. Like, I'm happy to, like, here's the funny thing. I'm happy to take the cake in the face to have sided, with Edencom in that one. It doesn't bother me because it's literally, as you say, cake in the face. It washes right off. There's no impact.
Well, a cake has impact.
I just do grow annoyed at the, like, well, you guys were there first. I was like, no, not really. So, but regardless.
I do like how you said nobody in test cares about, because you left out Brave. I caught that.
Well, it's important to remember, like, Legacy is full of many independent groups with their own independent goals, right? As I said, like, when it comes to test, we have, a couple of the main Trig FCs within test. So obviously, we're a little conflicted in terms of how that was going to go. And we spent the better part of the day arguing about Niarja during that morning.
Did you have words with Dunk Dinkle for giving the Imperium an opportunity to capture a moral victory?
No, not at all. I was the one who gave them the opportunity to, quote unquote, capture a moral victory.
Oh, I thought Dunk wrote something.
It's important to remember, like, the expectation was always that Niarja was going to fall. Anybody that thinks that, Niarja is going to hold up in that situation is not
detached from reality.
Yeah. Like, everybody was going to go to Niarja. I thought it would be fun to fight on the side of the good guys. Obviously, by the, before the night was basically over, it was already over. So there wasn't really a whole lot of opportunity or a whole lot of situations where we actually ended up doing any fighting. So it is what it is.
And just to make clear, when I went to bed, I was almost certain that because of the activity from Pappy, the fact that they even send a few dudes down there, I was sure it's gonna flip for the good side, and I was actually a little bit angry about that. It was only when I woke up that I saw that there had actually been rumblings and shenanigans in Imperium comms, and that they had actually decided to do something about it. I think this is one of those examples of what happens when the Mitani stays up too late and doesn't really know what to do, and then he sends some people around to have some fun. That's all it is. And again, if you want the other half of the story, because of course Vili is maybe underplaying it a little bit, and on the other side they're going to overplay it a little bit. But the other side has written a very, very good article. It's very well written. You can question some of the validity of the details, but it's at least a good article about the whole thing of how it actually evolved over the night, and how basically Goons went crazy and pulled an all-nighter to see how this worked and if they could get that moral win, even though it is, as Willie said, it's not significant. It is fairly tiny. It's a little bit of a slap in the face. So let's not overplay it, or let's not underplay it. Find the truth in the middle, please.
Well, there's something else. I mean, it wasn't Villy's responsibility to keep that trade route open, nor was it Legacy's responsibility. It was Edencom's responsibility. And they had just finished a massive fight where they fought for 40 hours straight. And then right when they were done with that, exhausted, Niarja becomes invaded. And they were just in no condition to respond very well. That was a big missing part of the puzzle that's more interesting to people who are in this Triglavian actual
From
war.
the start of the Triglavian invasions, the Triglavian forces have always been more organized, because at the very, very start, they had to go through a much rougher kind of crucible to take systems. So to take a system for the Trigs, you had to, if I recall correctly, the Edencom was kind of the natural winner, like the way the rats worked. So Triglavians always had to kind of work like twice as hard, basically, to get the wins early on. I think it was changed later, but it created a system where, you know, the tougher the system of growth you have, usually the stronger you become, right? So you know, if you've got to run 5 miles every day, the guy who only has to run 1 mile when it comes time for the marathon is in a much worse shape, right? And the Trigs, on top of that kind of a situation, they were also in a situation where they're how do I put this? They're just the cooler kid in a way, I guess you could say. You know, chaos is much more cool in a video game where people want to shoot each other, and you know, the Edencom guys didn't get. You know, it's just not the same level of popularity and coolness that you see.
Veritos says that the Edencom FCs were headshotted when they countered, and that was a turning point. So that might have been a tactical victory that I didn't know about. I do know they were generally spent by the time Niarja started.
Well, I mean, if you get headshot, you're doing something wrong in the first place because you're not flying a monitor.
Well, I think I don't know how or much of a role that played, like in terms of I wasn't really involved with any of the Niarja stuff, right? So I'm not gonna say, you know, it helped them or hurt them, or it was a big factor or a small factor. But generally, you know, it's important to remember that these are guys running effectively what used to be almost incursion fleets, right? So they're not going to be used to flying things like monitors or anything else when it comes to these kind of events.
So I know it's on topic, but there's an EVE Online Facebook group, right? And I know it might be a bit controversial or political, and I'm not trying to be political, but I know there's a lot of people in that EVE Facebook group who actually wanted Niarja and that to, you know, go in the negative way, to try and break up that trade route, sort of Care Bear route that EVE's had for a very long time. Again, not trying to get conspiracy or anything, but do you feel like are you tapped into? I'm guessing you are, like the outer community, you know, like people, like I said, on Facebook and things like that, who are looking at it and going, oh, like, you know, wouldn't it be awesome to just let it burn, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm saying, right? It's the cooler kid option. It just looks more fun, more exciting, more chaos, you know, and that's definitely going to play a factor into who's going to show up and do these things.
And I don't know if I'm correct in assuming that when it comes to something like Niarja, you were pretty much on the same page as, well, myself and maybe most of the Imperium. Is like, what is this invasion stuff? It's not newsworthy. It's not relevant. Why do we even care about this? And then in this particular case, suddenly it was a little bit more relevant. It had a bit more potential to be an event and newsworthy, right?
Well, I've done the invasions on both sides pretty heavily. So I generally try to, every time a new piece of content comes out, I try to do it on an alt and try to get a good foundational understanding of how it works. And I was really, I pretty comfortably understood the mechanics. I was in both the Edencom and Trig Discords, and I had a good idea who the people were running things. And like, it was very obvious from even the start, if it was just left to its own devices, the Trigs would have won handily. Like, the Edencom forces managed to win a system right before Niarja, but it was a slog, right? And Trigs weren't committing very hard to that fight. Just to kind of put it in perspective, when one side's putting in a medium level effort and the other's putting in extreme level of effort, and the extreme just barely wins, that kind of usually sets the stage. And that system wasn't very important.
Yeah.
So when you put it under something like Niarja, where you've got people coming from all over to help the Trigs, it makes it that much worse.
We're looking at the map of domain, and as you can see, I have Niarja circled. Now, if you look at the trail, you have 20,000 and then 30,000 entering into Amar. That's 30,000 jumps in the last 24 hours. Niarja used to be 20,000 per day. It's down to like 7. So it really is cut off now that security is no longer available to travelers through that system.
Is that jump status too? Does that include jump freighters? Perhaps does it include freighters that are jumping out of Amar?
You can't jump into Niarja. It was a high sex system. There's no
jump freighters very rarely.
No, sorry, jumping
like
out
Niarja.
of Amar. Does that count? Jumping out of Amar? Like
I don't
freighters?
actually know if Dotland, it's all jumps in and out. That's a good question, but that's a question for the developer of this app. I don't know. Doesn't say anywhere that what it is. I imagine it's anything coming in or going. Oh, Killer B has joined us. What's going on, Killer B?
He just left.
He just, all right.
I was going to ask him if he actually was one of the dudes in the higher perspective video.
So the other thing we want to talk about, because we need to get going pretty soon here, is Caleb, where'd you go on camera? Why don't you tell us what happened yesterday?
That story?
You have to. You're the one that encouraged me to tweet it. So you have to.
That's because, okay, we got a bad tip, right? Some dude came in. I think he plays Echoes, and I think he was directly affected by some of the shenanigans that was going on in Eve Echoes. Apparently, a rather low-level SA dude, something awful forums, had ended up.
We didn't know he was low
being
level. Right?
Part of the rollout of some of the Goon stuff on Eve Echoes. Basically, he had taken it upon himself to roll out all the IT stuff that was required to start playing over there, and that made him basically the CEO of that group. So what ended up happening was that this dude was not really what you would call normal or proper Goon or Imperium. He was like a semi-nobody that ended up in the position of power, and he ended up abusing it, and it created a lot of splash on SA forums and a lot of weird comms going on. But mostly it was because some of these Eve Echo players were actually victimized by this dude. It was fundamentally just goon fuckery by someone that wasn't even a real goon, and it just ended up being spun into this narrative of what is going on, and all the details were not there. So we thought that there was some weird stuff and a crack forming and whatever. We didn't have all the facts, and it was kind of ironic because it was very much a lol story. The positive or most relevant outcome was that some nobody in Echoes managed to actually get the Mittani to pay attention or go and actually post on SA again, and that was even joked about in the thread. So something that could have been a really good story and a very dramatic development turned out to be absolutely nothing.
Why could it have been a big story? What was
it's what it looked like, what it could have been, that it could have been a real crack, that it could have been, say, SA guys forming up in Echoes but not really playing Eve and not having been part of Imperium proper in Eve Online, and then going their own way, sort of thing. But that was definitely not the case, and yeah, it was just funny. Next time we should make sure to read up in detail when we get fed information from Echoes, because I don't. They might follow up on how things actually work in EVE Online.
Well, the information came out slowly, right? Like, the fact is, there was a conflict between players and Eve Echoes, that the third largest group
It was goon fuckery. It was someone really fucking over some of the players over there.
Yeah.
And some of them are still in his group, which is a bit tragic. But
so
now they are those two groups that have now split are now practically at war. But I think that's going to end.
So the leader of the Goonswarm Corporation or the Goonswarm Alliance in Eve Echoes is not Mittani, right? It is.
Well, there's not an actual presence.
They're not in Echoes.
Or the Imperium in Eve Echoes. It's more like a side thing. If you notice, much of the Eve veterans that have chosen to go and play Echoes because it's actually a fairly entertaining game, they're not really forming up in the traditional way, and they don't have the hierarchies and all that stuff yet. It's more like individuals or small groups forming up, trying it out for shits and giggles, right? And in the future that might develop into something. Who knows? Because there's a lot of players over there, and it looks like it is fairly successful. So as I asked Killer yesterday, if he thinks that we will start seeing these affiliations form and these groups having almost like a side presence, just like something like Dust used to have, right? So that could happen, definitely, because personal relationships in EVE Online and all the history that we have basically is our baggage if we start playing EVE Echoes. There's no way that we're going to be extremely friendly with someone that we are traditionally enemies to, right? So you're going to see this happen eventually, I believe. And I think you're already seeing a little bit of it.
Yeah, well, that's why this was significant, because it was actually a big group. It wasn't a small Goonswarm group with some guy. It was the third largest group in EVE Echoes already. It's only been a few days.
He was basically feeding in everyone, and when anyone joining from the Imperium and Goons, they see that and say and think, okay, that's where I have to go, right? And then of course they also got all the new players that are not imports from SA and from EVE Online. So you had this weird scenario, as Eric is saying, it's an SA Goon Squad, right?
Yeah, something awful. The original forums that goons come from. Goons are not EVE Online players. Goons are players from Something Awful that go into multiple video games. They have a presence in many different video games. It was probably stronger 7 years ago than it is now, 7 to 10 years ago. But in EVE Online, the Goon name comes from those players that were from Something Awful. And so when a new game appears, who gets to claim Goons, especially when EVE Echoes is an echo of EVE Online, right? And that was the conflict.
DNA, right? I think Dreaded is the same, right? That has its origins in Reddit, right? So this non-specific game DNA in many of the groups that we have, right?
You know, what's weird for me is it brings up the idea of identity. Who are you in EVE Online? What if Goons or Test and Dreadit, because these are communities that came into EVE Online, but they were already existing. That's one of their powers. They come in, they already belong. They don't have to build belonging with each other. That's one of their powers. But what if that doesn't exist in EVE Online for them?
But that's the point. It will. It always will, right? It's like, where are you from? You communicate outside of EVE Online. And this is back to something that
I would disagree with that statement. So it's important to understand that in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily the organization being there provides this outline that people can fill, right? It's like those things where you color, the lines are already there.
Coloring books?
Coloring books, I guess, yeah. So it's like a coloring book. Like the picture is already drawn for you. You just have to color it in, right, with people.
Or color by numbers is probably what you mean.
Color by numbers, probably. So like the outline is there for people in organizations. So everybody sees the outline. They know that this is the easier path. So they flood into it, right? But if the colors at the top, if the organization and the leadership isn't there in the right way, it will not only crumble, but it usually implodes pretty effectively every time. Because leading large groups of people is not just some casual thing, right? It's not something you can do in your off time to a degree, and then, you know, like if you deal with drama in the wrong way, if you handle issues in the wrong way, if you're not active enough, like all of these things will implode in your face spectacularly, right? And for a group like Echo, like Goons and Echoes, I have no doubt that people flooded to it because they say, okay, this is the Imperium, this is this well-built organization, and it's going to, you know, make my life easier in Echoes as I, you know, go up the ladder and learn this game. That being said, as we've already seen, if the leadership at the top is not properly there, then that doesn't work quite as well, and then you know, things implode every time. It's kind of an interesting dynamic.
And you know that I don't necessarily agree with that, because this is all
Sure.
about cultures outside that are forming and joining, say, a new game, and what the origin of that group is, whether it's Reddit or SA, or whether you're coming from another game where you had a big organization or a semi-established group. The point is that the established group of origin and the social cohesion is not something that you can just ignore. And then you can talk about leadership, and of course leadership is important, but it doesn't necessarily move from one of these groups to another. You could easily have a situation where the meritocratic leader of the Reddit group was not the leader that ended up being the leader in EVE Online, right? This is perfectly valid, and it's the same with all the games that these groups then join. You're going to see a shifting around of leadership, because there might not be an interest from the traditional leaders to play that game or to be in that activity. So
I very much disagree. I think you vastly overestimate the power of group leadership for, like, how would you call it, absent landlord leadership, I guess you could say. Or like, if Mittani doesn't play the game Eve Echoes, he can't be the leader of Eve Echoes. Like, maybe the person who leads the group called Goons and Eve Echoes can make a decision to submit to Mittani, but that doesn't mean he has to. And it's important to understand that there is a big difference there, right? And that's how you create more drama usually.
I think I would call it almost like a vassal state. Anyways, I really want to ask before Killer runs away. The footage of the new video from Higher Perspective, is that you in those fleets? Because I'm pretty sure I heard your voice in there.
What video? I don't watch all the videos that get released at the time.
It was some runs in Delve that Higher Perspective YouTube posted with you guys putting a few fleets in there.
Probably not. So link me the video. I can watch it and tell you. I have no idea what.
I thought you would know. Anyways, I'm just going to link you, and then people can go and find it themselves.
All right, so this is the discussion we had yesterday. You can find it in Echoes Local, which is found under Eve Echoes Mobile. That is on the Talking in Stations Discord. Put that in chat.
Did you guys talk about the beauty of the new patch coming in today already?
The Zenitra.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about that. Actually, I'll bring it up. Let me just tap that into there. Invite link. And back to Chrome. Whoops. There we go. Okay.
Zenitra is actually good.
Yeah, what's going on with Zenitra? It's supposed to become a lot more powerful.
Basically had a big buff to its damage.
Yeah.
So it does about 150% more than it did before. So enough that it's relevant and you're willing to give it a shot, I guess, for most people. As it was currently one of those ones where it did less damage than like a. Wow, it just did terrible damage. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was so bad.
Yeah.
and nobody had any time for it, basically.
What's its history when it came in? Like there was a time where it was seen as rare, like you couldn't build it, but it was supposed to do, at least theoretically, unimaginable amounts of damage. And
so what happened is when they put it on the test server at the very first, they just put in some fake numbers to like some holdaway numbers, or I don't know which we call them. Like these are just some numbers, placeholders, I guess.
Yeah.
And everybody saw the placeholders from Hobo Leaks, and they're like, "Oh my god, this thing does 100,000 damage. It's going to be worth 10 dreads, in damage." And everybody was like losing their minds, and like their brains were exploding. And then CCP was like, I don't know if the numbers they'd originally planned got lowered even more because of this, but like they're just like, yeah, we don't need that breaking the game, and they put it in, really conservatively. And obviously the ability to get the Zenitra was really low at the start because it was only farmable from the invasion content. And as the invasion content has grown and there's been more avenues and you can now get it through all of the invasion stuff going on, it's become more and more accessible, basically.
Well, and so now it's gotten a damage buff, which makes it even more desirable. How many of these things have been built, would you reckon?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
So these finally did get whatever whatever choke point there was for the creation of these things. People have surpassed that now.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think is going to happen with these things gaining so much power? Do you see them used as some kind of doctrine for larger organizations, or what's their use case?
I mean, they're still trash for the primary role that most people use dreads for, which is dread bombing, because they're expensive and the damage they do, while higher, is still not at a level where you're going to go, oh, I can do that. It's I don't know how to put this. It's like the current roles for dreadnoughts are a short range bomb dread, a long range sniper dread, combat Horde dread, and it can't do any of those three roles. So the only place where it really fits is like wormhole close range dread, where it can't be played into like a bomb dread role, or like low sec limited dread bomb kind of spots. Outside that, I don't know where it really fits at all.
Do you want to say that's not my voice at all, Caleb?
Sure.
I don't know how you'd confuse that with me at all.
Oh,
okay. Like the FC's talking at the start as Alpha Star, and then I wasn't even there for that because that happened in USTZ. That happened at like 4 a.m. my time, so I was sound asleep.
Oh, is he talking about Alpha Star like whelping all the Feroxes and stuff?
Talking about some video that I had not seen. It's called The Imperium Welcomes Panda Fem to Delve, and it's about that one fight that ASP took in, or like where he lost a bunch of Feroxes basically. And for some reason Caleb thought that was me, which I'm very sad about, actually.
Caleb's powers of observation are astonishing.
It's just because I was not sure who it was, because I think
it's Alpha.
I think they sped up a little bit, so it sounds a little bit weird to me.
ASP. It's
well,
the superstar of PH, basically.
Yeah, Pandemic Horde's main FC. I didn't see that video, but did he whelp a bunch of Feroxes, it sounds like?
Yeah, he went into depth and lost a bunch of Feroxes. But I think he had a poll before he did it in his fleet, and I think he had like 75% people saying, yeah, let's go get a brawl, and that's what he did. So I feel like he did nothing wrong. As the fleet commanders, it's mainly our responsibility to make sure our fleet members have fun, and sometimes you just gotta go, right?
Yeah, the night before he did the same thing and had a poll to bring an Augur and Navy issue fleet into Delve and had a similar result. And he's been doing that a lot recently with his evening fleets.
Yeah, it's just a cultural thing, right? Horde is comfortable whelping 150 Feroxes a night. That doesn't like stress them in the least. So that's what their guys want to do. They want to try, go out there, shoot some stuff, and have fun. And obviously, it's not perfect. It'd be better if you could just win all the fights, but obviously going into Delve at this point, that's not really realistic. So
it's
about having fun too, though.
There was
video game.
doubt, right? And I thought they were really good videos, so I just wanted to bring them up.
All right, mystery solved. All right, so Dreaded Collective, the changes to the Triglavian ships is now live. So whatever was announced is now in the game for these Zenitra dreadnoughts from Triglavian, the Triglavian, let's call it race. And that just came out today. Well, I talked to CCP a little bit offline, and they were saying like, hey, people are coming back from vacation, and so things are going to get going. And I was just thinking, there's been a lot of change this summer. Like, there's been a lot of things happening, both player made and CCP development made, while people were on vacation. So I can't imagine what speed they're going to hit all the way up to the end of the year.
Because people aren't really going on vacation, let's be real, right?
That's true.
On vacation probably means like not,
a bike ride.
Yeah, something like driving around in the respective country.
New convertible.
Yeah. Well, time away from
Just
the
imagine
office.
Matterall in his convertible.
Don't have a convertible.
With his hair out.
Blowing in the wind.
Hopefully it means that some of the stuff that Killer was asking for yesterday is going to materialize, that the CCP is going to take a bit of an active role in spinning this whole story and all this drama, and maybe having some of those nice videos again.
Well, we'll see. One thing we know, with 1,000 Titans, I'm going to take Billy's number, moving up to Iridia. That gives him 3 entrances into Delve. And you heard it here. Billy said those super capitals are meant to march onto Delve. Knowing that, we're going to have a pretty eventful next few months.
Yep. It's worth pointing out that 1,000 Titans was across all time zones, right? Wasn't like a single move up with a ton.
Yeah, that was the first day. But
yeah,
Imperium's like, oh, it was only 600.
First 24 hours, yeah.
So,
not being biased or anything, but like, don't goons have like heaps of Titans? Because people in there, I mean, Billy, your group's probably got the same, but like people have been playing since 2005 or 2004.
They probably have 2,000 by now, right? Because they had 1,000.
They never had 1,000.
They never? What about those thousands of Titans that marched on tribute?
It was a made-up D-scan.
No.
It became real.
I can tell you from personal experience, being a little industry miner, raw cool. When we like hit the red alarm and needed help, they dropped, I kid you not, like 12 Titans. Like just
a whole 12, dude. Yes.
Yeah, well, other
Goons
places too, like
heat.
other ships. Yeah, but like that's what Goons did, and like when 12 Titans just come through the Sino, plus other like just all sorts of ships, like the enemy kind of go, uh-oh. But that's what like Goons used to do. Yeah, so which is awesome. Like it's awesome for when you're farming and like someone tries to gank you and you're like, oh, Goons, red alert. But yeah, so
it's safe to assume they have at least 12 Titans. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
at least 12. Yeah, at least 12.
Probably
yeah,
at least a dozen, maybe a couple dozens, even. Who knows?
As far as I'm tracking, nobody has ever seen the Imperium form more than 320 Titans for an op.
Wait a minute, Killer B, back me up. How many Titans do they have in 9G6 or whatever?
9G6? What the fuck's that?
9 Tech 4, he means.
Yeah, 9 Tech 4.
No, 9 Tech 4 wasn't the prime. Like the prime for everybody was X47, and in X47, both sides had around 500 Titans. But you have to keep in mind that a portion of that wasn't the Imperium's Titans; it was Legacy and Test as well, who did move in range for X47 as well, right, and showed up for the fight. So
what was the $1 million fight? Didn't have Titans; they brought super carriers.
Titans there. It was just. That was under 300 per side.
Oh,
yeah, okay. It was not a lot of Titans in 9 Tech 4.
So X47 was the pentacle of Titan.
Yeah,
use.
It was like 800 or 900 Titans on. Like I think it was like close to 900 Titans on grid, or maybe a bit more than 900.
But that was everybody.
Yeah, that was everybody.
Okay, so
they like that's why I kept saying like this stupid 1,000 number kept popping up throughout like the times when we started planning this. Where it was, but Goons moved to 1,000. Like no. Yes, like, okay, I guess, but these numbers are irrelevant. Like, what you move on a move up, all it really tells you is what you technically have available, and then what you can probably put on grid throughout all the time zones. But assuming that, in a fight, in a Super Cap or Titan fight these days, I don't think either side is going to be fielding 1,000 Titans. That is, well, A, the server isn't going to hold up, and B, that's just not going to happen. I think you could see I could see like 500, maybe 600 on each side, but no single side is going to field 1,000 Titans. I don't like that's not going to happen.
How many pilots do they have for those Titans?
They have
That's
ults.
obviously moving like. Wait, what? 1,000. Every Titan has a
won't
pilot.
move 1,000.
Since keep stars mean you can have multiple old Titans per pilot now.
I don't think
That's
many
not
people...
really a thing. If you're gonna get a second Titan, you're gonna get a second pilot for it, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have a spare Titan on hold, but like that's not the thing really. They're gonna if it ever gets to a Titan battle, then every Titan fielded obviously has a pilot for it, right? Like characters aren't a limitation anymore. Ever since skill injectors, if you own one Titan and you want to get a second Titan, you're gonna inject yourself a second Titan character.
Yeah,
That's
Or a
just what it
third
is.
or
Like,
fourth or whatever.
yeah,
The issue is
like,
always ships.
you know, we have a dude in NC that like the other day when we were moving down, he's moving 12 Titans by himself. That's not something that doesn't exist. It's
12 Titans,
it's
one
just
guy?
what it is. Like ever since injectors was introduced into the game, everything relating SP and character limitation in that regard became irrelevant.
Totally,
it just doesn't
yeah.
exist anymore. It exists on like an individual basis, but on an alliance level, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you as a jump freighter pilot, I had 5 ults just to create a Sino chain. So it's just as easy enough for these guys to have Titan pilots, right? Like you said, with skill injectors these days. But yeah.
But okay, let's...
The question is not how many Titans can you fly, it's how many Titans do you want to fly.
Yes.
Yeah, none of them will bring it out either. They don't want the losses on the kill
And
board.
I guess
that's fact of the matter.
I guess we'll see.
Nobody cares about Z-kill.
I guess we shall see in the next few weeks. We expect to see some Titans. This is what I wanted to ask. Is moving the Titans in position for a strike on Delve eventually? Is it a reaction to, in any way, to the servers being unstable with all the drones and fighters being used?
No.
Well, we move super carriers as well, which aren't going to help.
Okay, so that
Like-
theory is out the window. Okay.
Like super carriers are just as bad as regular carriers for server lag. We've been planning this for a while. We've been just trying to get these keep stars online bit by bit, trying to keep it as low key as possible. Obviously, they all got up nice and easy, no issues. And once the chain was up, we wanted to, get moving the first weekend we could.
Right.
Can I tell you a silly story
Okay.
that involves Delve?
Quickly.
I dropped 300 shuttles out of a bowhead into Delve, and that didn't mess with the server lag.
Okay, I see where you're going, but not the same
Yeah.
thing. Not the same thing as what we've been seeing lately with thousands of people in system, because these fights are really big. I mean, these fights are very notable on their own, and we're getting them around different timers on Keepstars. I think we saw 4,500 on the first Keepstar. That was a huge number.
Yep.
Those are historic numbers.
Certainly getting there with the numbers and actually getting fights in that scale as well. So it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, obviously the first Keepstar is always going to be a little bit special. The first time, Goon's lost Keepstar. I think it was J5A was the first one we killed.
Yeah.
But
Those were my 3. The first 3 were my 3, and they all went very smoothly. The second 3 are kind of a mess. I don't know.
I mean, perhaps the level of resistance might play a factor there, but who knows? With that being said, all 3 of those Keepstars that had been killed, plus the 4th in OTEC P, all of those had different levels of hype surrounding them. And certainly once you see a combined kind of Pappy force with Titans and Supers and everything else, and the Imperium hyping and everything else, I have no idea what the server is going to look like. It's very possible you could see, if there was 4,000 or 5,000 for J5A, there could be 7,000 for like 1DQ, like on one side, like that kind of level craziness. So I don't even want to think about, the poor CCP server that has to try and deal with that.
All right. Okay, we'll leave it there. We've been going for over an hour this time. Good to see you guys. Thanks for coming by. Come by anytime. Thanks, Caleb, for hanging out and telling us some stuff about Goonswarm and Echoes. And we will try to see you guys tomorrow. Our schedule is a little up and down because we have different scheduling problems in real life here. So look for us at 1800 as opposed to, what was it before? 1600 or 50, I don't know. Look for us at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Around there. All right. Thanks, everyone. Oh, too loud. We will see you next time. We'll actually look for someone to raid here. Take suggestions. Oh, Ron's around. I always give you over to Ron.
What? Ron's streaming? Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? We give you to Ron because
I actually love his coverage so far. It's pretty good.
We figure
keeping
that
it up.
People who are interested in the kind of big topics we talk about, fit nicely with his crowd as well. All right, guys. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.
Every time he gets the whiteboard out, I'm like, oh, this will be good.
Yeah, I love the whiteboard.